Last time we ended with a question: how do the athletes who understand money differently end up ahead of the superstars who made 10 times more? Here's the answer, and it just played out this month on the biggest stage in basketball. Jalen Brunson gave up $113 million, walked away from it, the biggest pay cut in the history of professional sports. And a few weeks ago, that decision ended 53 years of heartbreak. The New York Knicks won their first championship since 1973. Every headline is calling it a sacrifice, a selfless gift, and it was generous, but that's not the real story, because when you run the numbers, leaving that $113 million on the table wasn't charity, it was the single smartest financial move in modern basketball. We're going to follow that money, what he gave up, why it was genius, what it bought, and what a New York championship is actually worth. The number will surprise you. Let's start with exactly what Brunson did. In July of 2024, he was about to become eligible 1 year later for a 5-year contract worth $269.1 million. That deal was sitting in front of him. All he had to do was wait 12 months. He didn't wait. He signed early for 4 years and $156.5 million. Do the subtraction, and the number is staggering. He walked away from $113 million of guaranteed money. This season alone, he made $34.9 million, when he could have been making $46.4. For almost any other athlete on Earth, and you saw this in our last video, that is the opening scene of a financial disaster. Money turned down, money left behind. The decision that ends in regret and a documentary about going broke. But Brunson didn't lose that money. He spent it, deliberately, on the one thing in the modern NBA that money alone can no longer buy. And to understand what that is, you first have to understand why the richest team in basketball spent 2 decades proving that money doesn't win championships at all. Because here's the irony at the center of this story. For most of the last 50 years, the New York Knicks were the cautionary tale. They had the most money, the biggest market, and an owner, James Dolan, who was willing to spend it. And what did all that spending buy? Over one 19-year stretch, the Knicks had just 3 winning seasons, one playoff series victory. They won 39% of their games, and in that same window, they paid the NBA's luxury tax 10 separate times. 10 times they paid a premium reserved for contenders, and 10 times they weren't won. Think about the 2011 Carmelo Anthony trade. At Dolan's insistence, the Knicks packed in every young player and draft pick they had to land a superstar. Melo is a Hall of Famer. It didn't matter, they never came close. They even let a young Jeremy Lin, Linsanity himself, walk out the door rather than pay a luxury tax bill. So the Knicks learned the most expensive lesson in sports the hard way: you cannot simply buy a championship by spending the most. And that lesson is exactly what makes what Brunson did so radical. He did the opposite of everything the old Knicks believed. To see why, you have to understand the most important and least understood rule in professional sports today: the second apron. In 2023, the NBA rewrote its rulebook and drew a new line, a spending ceiling. And crossing it doesn't just cost you a luxury tax, it triggers penalties designed to make building an expensive super team almost impossible. Cross the second apron, and here's what happens to your team. You can no longer combine player salaries to make a trade, you cannot send cash in deals, you lose your mid-level exception, the main tool for signing outside free agents, and your future first-round draft picks get frozen. In plain English, the moment you cross that line, you are locked into the roster you already have. You can't add, you can't fix, you're stuck, handcuffed by your own payroll. And this isn't theory. Look at the teams that crossed it. In the 2024-25 season, the Boston Celtics, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Phoenix Suns all blew past the second apron. They became the first teams in history to have their 2032 draft picks frozen. Between them, they paid roughly $300 million in luxury tax, and within a year, Boston and Phoenix were forced to tear their rosters apart just to climb back under the line. That is apron hell. You pay the most, you get punished the hardest, and you still can't build. Now look back at Brunson. If he had taken every dollar he was owed, his salary would have pushed the Knicks straight over that same second apron into the exact trap that broke Boston and Phoenix. By taking less, he kept New York under the line. And that flexibility is what built the champion. They used it to absorb Karl Anthony Towns' enormous contract. They traded for Mikal Bridges and signed him to a $150 million extension. They opened a mid-level exception the next summer. None of those moves, not one, is legal if Brunson takes the bigger check. ESPN's top cap expert Bobby Marks called it potentially an historic moment. So Brunson spent $113 million to buy roster flexibility, the rarest currency in basketball. What did that flexibility produce? A championship. And this is where the story flips from one man's sacrifice to one of the great money machines in American sports. Because a title in New York isn't a trophy, it's an engine. Start with the playoff run itself. A deep postseason isn't a celebration, it's a revenue event. A single first-round home game generates around $8 million in tickets, suites, concessions, and merchandise. The second round, about $12 million a game. The conference finals, $17. And an NBA Finals home game is worth at least $20 million each. Stack those up across a championship run, and the Knicks are projected to bring in over $140 million in new revenue from this single postseason. The year before, when they fell short, it was $115 million. Going all the way didn't just win a trophy, it printed an extra $25 million on top. And the money doesn't stay inside the arena. According to the Office of the Mayor of New York City, the Knicks' playoff run generated around $202 million in economic activity for the city, a number projected to climb toward $465 million across a full finals. Every single home playoff game pumps roughly $90 million into the city: restaurants, hotels, bars, transit, parking. One team's run becomes a $500 million event for an entire city. Even the players cash in beyond their salaries. The league sets aside about $36 million in playoff bonuses, and the champion takes the biggest slice. And the tickets tell you what a New York championship is really worth. This was the most expensive NBA Finals ever recorded. At Madison Square Garden, just getting in the door for Games 3 and 4 started near $4,000. On resale, the cheapest seat for a single game hit $10,000. The priciest single ticket over $110,000, and one pair of courtside seats sold for $279,000 for one night of basketball. Here's the part that matters for the team: the franchise keeps about 75% of that ticket revenue. When seats sell for the price of a house, 3/4 of that flood pours straight into the building Brunson's pay cut helped fill. And it doesn't stop at the final buzzer. The night the Knicks reached the finals, the stock of their parent company, MSG Sports, hit an all-time high. Riding this run, that stock is up 86% over the last 12 months. Winning didn't just sell tickets, it made the owners, on paper, dramatically richer in real time. But the gate and the stock, that's the money you can see. The real fortune is in the number almost nobody talks about: what the franchise itself is now worth. In 2024, the New York Knicks were valued at $7.5 billion. By 2025, $9.75 billion. Today, after this run, they sit at $10.1 billion, the second most valuable franchise in the entire NBA, behind only Golden State. So while Brunson was losing $113 million, the value of the team he plays for climbed by more than $2.5 billion. And then there's the rarest currency of all: attention. This was the most watched NBA Finals since 1998. It averaged nearly 20 million viewers a game, with single games topping 23 million. The press called it the biggest title moment since the Michael Jordan era. You cannot buy that. A championship in the biggest media market on earth turns a basketball team into a global brand. The moment the buzzer sounded, championship merchandise sold out across the city. Season ticket waitlists, already years long, exploded, and prices for next season climb the instant a banner goes up. The Knicks threw a parade through the Canyon of Heroes, the kind of moment New York reserves for champions and astronauts, and every second of it was free, global advertising for a brand that was already the most valuable in the league. And remember what this ended: 53 years, 2 full generations of New Yorkers lived and died without ever seeing this team win. That drought is exactly why the brand value is so enormous now: scarcity. The Knicks were never the problem as a business. They print money whether they win or lose. But a title transforms them from the richest team that couldn't win into the crown jewel that finally did. That story, 53 years to one night, is worth more than any single contract Jalen Brunson could ever have signed. So let's go back to that $113 million and finish the math, because here's the twist almost nobody saw coming. By winning Finals MVP, Brunson reset his own value. As a champion and an MVP, he's now positioned for a new extension that recovers an estimated $76 million of exactly what he gave up. He bet on himself, and the win is quietly handing most of the money back. But Brunson getting his money back is the small story, because while one player gave up $113 million to win this title, there is someone in this story who never gave up a single cent, never risked his body, and walked away richer than every player on the floor: the owner. His name is James Dolan, and his net worth is around $2 billion. He doesn't just own the Knicks, he runs an empire: the Knicks, the New York Rangers, Madison Square Garden itself, and the $2 billion Sphere in Las Vegas. And here's how that empire started. Back in 1997, the Dolan family's company bought the business that owned Madison Square Garden, the arena, the teams, all of it, for about $600 million. Today, the Knicks alone are worth $10.1 billion. One franchise out of that entire $600 million purchase is now worth more than 16 times the price of the whole thing. Now hold that against Brunson. Brunson has a body that breaks down, a career that averages a few short years, and to win this, he gave up $113 million he'll spend the rest of his life earning back. Dolan played 0 minutes, risked nothing physical, and the asset he holds just goes up. And this is the part almost no one understands: the quiet magic trick of owning a team. NBA franchises now appreciate around 20% a year, but owners almost never sell. Instead, they borrow against that rising value at low interest rates, and because they never actually sell the team, they never trigger the capital gains tax. The fortune grows on paper, and they spend it like cash, largely untaxed. The player pays nearly half his salary in taxes the moment he earns it. The owner can grow billions and touch almost none of it. And here is the cruelest line of the whole story. The value of the Knicks climbed for decades through 53 straight years of not winning a championship. Brunson had to win a title to get his money back. Dolan didn't have to win anything, he just had to hold. The player rents the glory for a few short years. The owner owns the asset forever, and it pays him whether the team wins or loses. So here's the real verdict. Jalen Brunson did something brilliant. He treated his paycheck as a tool instead of a prize, and it bought him a championship, an MVP, and most of his money back. He outthought every broke athlete in our last video. But the deeper truth sits one level above him. In modern sports, the player sacrifices his money and his body for a shot at glory, and the owner, who risks neither, quietly gets richer either way. This channel breaks down the economics behind the biggest deals in sport, and this is chapter 1 of a series following the money behind the Knicks title, all the way from the players to the people who really own the game. Subscribe so you don't miss a single piece of it. Because this chapter leaves one last question, and it points straight at you. The players sacrificed to win, the owners cashed in without lifting a finger. So who actually paid for all of it? The $10,000 tickets, the billions in value, the whole machine. Follow the money down instead of up, and it ends in one place. Next time, what it really costs to be a fan, and why the people in the cheap seats are quietly funding the billionaires in the suites. One player gave up $113 million to win, one owner gave up nothing, and won anyway. That's not basketball, that's the business of sports.